Hi, Jeremy.
Good evening, Jeff. How are you?
Yes, good evening to you. I am doing great. How are you, Jeremy?
I am doing pretty well as well, and I'm really excited for today's guest.
Oh, great. Yes, we've invited a special guest for tonight. Our guest is the founder and the president of Engaging Minds. Are you familiar with executive function skills?
Executive function skills. Well, at first, the title supporting students with executive function. I was thinking that the students are going to be executives, but kidding aside, uh, I'm sort of familiar when it comes to executive function, but I'm not the best person to talk about it. So why not we invite Dan in so that he could
Yes,
talk
of
about
course.
what the
All
executive
right, so
functions are.
yes, let's bring in our guest. He's the founder and president of Engaging Minds. He has a long experience in teaching students, and maybe it's best to hear it from him. Hi, Dan. Good morning to you. Hello.
Thank you. Good morning and good evening. How are you?
We're doing great. Hope you are fine. Dan is live in Boston, and I'm glad. First of all, Dan, we'd love to thank you. We'd like to thank you for joining us, for saying yes to our invitation. And so, Dan, maybe you can tell us something about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I founded a company in 2010 called Engaging Minds, and the idea behind the company was to be a learning center, a tutoring company, an after-school program for kids where they could learn valuable skills to help them become more successful in school. And the term executive function is a term that had been talked about for a little while back in 2010. Now it's much more widely used and known. But it's essentially giving students the skills they need to be successful, the how behind what they're doing. So things like how to organize, prioritize, get started, get ideas out and organized onto paper, all the tools the kids need to be successful. So I've worked in private schools for a long time, and what I noticed was there was a lot of expectations on the kids, but not a lot of the teaching of the how behind the way they should approach their work. So I teamed up with some really smart educators, and we developed the program, and here we are 10 years later.
Oh,
Wow.
great.
Okay.
So, yeah, when I hear executive function, what comes to my mind would be skills for people in the corporate world. Did this skill come from that background?
So, yes, what we're teaching executive function skills are life skills. They're all life skills. But it's, for kids, it's applying it to academics and schoolwork. For adults, it's applying it to daily life. But as the kids learn these skills, they're lifelong skills that they can apply as they go off to university or into their first, second, third, fourth job. They're all skills to help us
Yeah.
succeed and stay on top of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Oh, great. So, to all our viewers watching us right now, I just want to make some clarification because here in the Philippines, the understanding of a tutorial center, it's like study hall there. Here, when you say tutorial center, there's a teacher and then there's a group of kids, and then they do study and then they can ask teachers, their teacher or their tutor. But there's different, right? When you say tutoring, is it like one on one, like what you do?
Yeah, we only work one-on-one with students, and that's by design. Um, if you put three kids in a room together and talk about how you're going to track your homework, keep track of what you need to do, each student might do it in a slightly different way. And our message to the kids is it doesn't matter how other people do it. We need to help you figure out your best way of doing that. And the best way to do that is one-on-one. A small group, you can kind of do a blanket kind of conversation,
Right.
but when you're working one-on-one, you can really dig in and help the student figure out their best way of approaching things. And that's why we really only spend time one-on-one. It's much more effective for this type of skill building.
Oh, okay, I see. So, how many students do you get to, coach in a day? Do you get a tutor in a day?
So we have two sites, and now we're working with kids all over the country since we went virtual. Um, but in any one day, we could be tutoring 40, 50 kids between our two sites. And over the course of the week, we're doing 250 to 300 hours of coaching.
Oh, wow, that is quite a lot, right, Jeremy?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah. So, can you tell us more about what these skills are and the definition
Yeah,
of each skill?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That.
So
I mean, earlier you talked about nine, right?
yes.
And
Yep.
then out of the nine, you could put them all into three separate buckets, right? So
Yeah.
what are those?
So the way that maybe can I just give you a quick brief explanation of executive function before I jump into these? Okay.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
please.
please. Yes, please.
So I like to use this metaphor. If you went on a hike with your kids and it was a 90-minute hike up a hill, nothing too dramatic, you need sneakers and water to get up that hill on that hike, right? Nothing too difficult. Sneakers, water, maybe a snack, and you're good. And for a
Mhm.
lot of kids, that's where they are in school. They have their sneakers, they have their water, they've got the intelligence, and they're able to get by because the work isn't as challenging as it needs to be. At some point in our academic career, we all come upon an ice wall, and sneakers and water aren't going to get you over an ice wall. You need different tools and strategies. That's what we're teaching. Those we call the executive function skills. So those skills are things like how to organize your materials, how to organize ideas, and that's for writing, for reading comprehension, for studying, right? So it's big organization, but materials and online organization, the physical organization, but then also the mental organization. Planning and time management, using a calendar effectively, being able to work backwards to make sure you're going to get your work done on time, have a big picture plan of what is due and when. Task initiation, number 4, the ability to get started, right? A lot of us have a hard time initiating. We might procrastinate a lot. And the ability to kind of get yourself unstuck and moving is a really valuable and important skill. We talk a lot about shifting and flexibility, shifting between one activity and another, one idea and another, the flexibility to be able to say, hey, this way isn't working, let me try going this way. And that's hard for a lot of people to do, a lot of kids especially. Working memory, how you handle for studying in the short term. Self-monitoring, so the ability to start and see something through to fruition. So the ability to monitor yourself to make sure you're following the steps you need to follow. And then the last two are impulsivity and emotional control. And that's not something that we spend a lot of time on because we're only working one-on-one. And if a kid is getting distracted or frustrated, it's much easier for us to bring them back. So the majority of the work that we're doing is those first 7 that I mentioned. It's a lot,
Okay.
right? It sounds
Yeah.
like there's a lot there, but the reason we do it that way is we want to be really specific about what the students' needs are, and then specific ways that we can actually help them. So we really try to spell it out into those 9 distinct domains, so then we can really hyper focus to help the kids.
Okay. Thank
All
you,
right.
Dan. So, at what age would be a good development stage for the students?
It's a great question. So executive functions live in a frontal lobe of the brain, okay? And that's the last region of the brain to fully develop. And they say now that region doesn't fully develop. They used to say into your late 20s, early 30s. Now they're saying for some, even until their 40s, okay?
Okay.
So my point to parents is
I'm there.
I always say to parents, to think that your 15-year-old or your 10-year-old should be able to do something. It's not necessarily fair because their brain might not be there yet.
Right.
However, what science has shown is that there's a lot of executive function, that frontal lobe development around first grade, around fifth and sixth grade, and then all the way through adolescence. So what I try to say to parents is, it's the big arc between 5 years old and 19 years old, and then it kind of levels out a little bit. If you can get the kids in that window, and honestly, the earlier the better, right? Because you're teaching new skills, not breaking down bad habits to reteach new habits. If you can start with the kids early enough, you're teaching them important skills. It's just going to make school easier for them in the long run.
Oh,
Okay.
that's
All
interesting.
right. That's very interesting, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. At 40s, it's still developing, or will only fully develop at 40s, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
But we get calls from kids that are in college. We get calls for adults. We don't work with adults, but there are a lot of adults. We can all think of adults in our life who misplace their keys and wallet constantly,
Right.
or can't get to meetings on time, or aren't great remembering to text or email their friends or their coworkers. These are skills that people still struggle with in adult life, and our thinking is, if we can help them earlier on, not necessarily elementary, though we do work with some elementary kids, but especially in middle school and high school, where there's just so much work and so many expectations, it's going to set them up for success and skills they need to learn, but much earlier on than later on in life, when you're in your first job.
It's just
Right.
like having this meeting effectiveness course in
Yeah.
college, for example.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
what about in the context of what is happening right now? What among the 9 skills you think is most helpful for students right now in this remote learning?
It's a really good question. In the remote learning especially, can I go just a step back to just
Sure.
life in 2020? Okay.
Sure.
So when we were all in school, right, how did we get information? We had to go to encyclopedias. We had to go to the library, right? Go through the card catalog. We had to, I don't know if you guys did it, I'm going to tell you my age, but we used microfilm, microfiche, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In 2020, information's right here. All the information these kids could need is right here in their phone. So it's no longer about finding the information, because that's easy to do. Now it's, how do I access and organize all that information? How do I know it's good information versus not good information? So it's a different set of skills that our kids need in 2020 than we did in the 1980s and 90s. Okay? So just the world has changed, and education is changing a little bit more slowly, but with it, to start thinking about, well, what skills are now most important, right? Finding stuff, yes, but what I do with that information, how to synthesize that information, is even more important than ever before. So during the pandemic, what we found is there's a lot of kids who just need help figuring out, where's my homework? How do I find it? There's 3 different websites I have to go to for this teacher, and then a different one for this teacher, and then some teachers are using this portal, and just kind of managing from home without teachers reminding you every day because they're not seeing you every day, without not being able to hand things out that kids could put in their binders. The management of the work we've seen has been a real challenge for many, many kids. That's been really the biggest kind of light bulb that we've seen is the organization of materials, the management of the work they need to do. And then, Jeremy, in terms of getting started on things, that's also become an issue because they've got a lot of free time in their day. And when they're home, they've got their video games, they've got FaceTime, they've got lots of distractions. So even the getting started on things has become even more difficult.
Okay. And speaking of it being difficult, it's not really the skills. I mean, in terms of technology, for example, or interfacing with software, it's really the management and how to organize things, being conscientious, basically.
Yeah,
Right?
Right.
that's exactly right. These kids are growing up. I mean, they're calling my son's generation. My son is turning 6 this month. The swipe generation, right? These kids, when he was 2, he went up to our TV. He didn't like what was on. He tried to swipe it away to the next thing, right? So these kids are
Right.
growing up in a world of we have to learn the technology. For them, it's innate. It's part of their lives from the
It's
very beginning.
Uh-huh.
they're digital natives, right? So,
Exactly.
so what are the strategies within how to manage information that these students can implement in their day-to-day activities for school?
There's lots of strategies and ways of approaching it. We try to help kids use calendars more effectively. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess let's take a step back first. Kind of making a list that they can refer to where they can find their schoolwork. So, not guessing every day, but having something written down, maybe even with links that take you right to the places you need to check every day where you're going to find your homework. And from there, it might be taking a calendar, whether it's an online calendar or a physical calendar, and kind of just mapping things out. Tomorrow, I've got a history test, and next week, I've got a project due for history, and later that week, I have a test in biology. And we try to help the kids kind of take that information from online or wherever they're collecting it and put it into something usable that where they can make plans and kind of look ahead. So a lot of it is helping kids take that 10,000-foot view, not just get lost in what's due tomorrow, but really stepping back and saying, well, what does my week look like? What do the next 2 weeks look like? Because I've also got soccer practice and I have to practice my instrument and I've got, a birthday party to go to. So kind of managing all of that is a real critical piece from just the minutia of getting the work and kind of understanding what it is, but then making yourself a plan of how you can achieve and finish all of that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does.
Oh
It
yeah,
does.
it's like
So,
going to your balcony, right? Having like a bird's eye view of everything.
Correct. Correct. And
Okay.
and once you see that big picture, right? Which let's be honest, it's hard for even adults to do sometimes, right? To be able to take that step
yes,
back and see
definitely.
it. But if you can learn how to do that, and like on my screen, I've got a Google Calendar that shows me the week. So I'm kind of thinking as I'm setting up new meetings or have projects that need to get done. I'm constantly looking at my calendar to see when am I going to be able to fit this meeting in and what's going to be appropriate for me given my workload that has to come, not in meetings that I have to do on my own. So it's really that ability to step back, see that bigger picture, and then make plans and how to achieve each of those goals that you've got, which would be assignments for kids.
Yeah. So, well, in your experience, how long does it take for a kid to or a student to develop this habit of what you teach?
Great question. I'll tell you that it really, and this is going to sound awful, but it depends on the student, and here's why.
Uh,
Our average length of stay is
yeah.
12 to 18 months, about a year and a half.
About a
Okay.
year. Yeah.
Now, granted, most 70% are coming to us just once a week for 55 minutes, so it takes some
Oh.
time to build habits. Other kids are coming 2 or 3 times a week, but there's not a quick fix to executive function. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, right? And it takes commitment on the part of the student. So when I say it depends on the student, one thing is how open are they to receiving help, right? Some kids that we get at the beginning are very reticent. They're doing just fine. Their grades aren't bad. So they're saying to mom and dad, why do you need me to get extra help? I'm doing fine. So they're reticent to accept the support. Once they start to see how we can streamline things or make them more efficient in getting their work done, then we start to get some buy-in. Other kids come to us And after the third session, say, "Mom and Dad, thank you. This is exactly what I needed." They're so relieved to have someone kind of helping them, supporting them to manage everything. So it's the buy-in, it's the willingness to engage, and then it's the willingness outside of their sessions to practice the skills that we're teaching them. So one of the things that we do is before we leave every one-on-one session with a student, we make what we call an action plan. Something that the student and the instructor together agree is something that the student will follow through on or work on over the course of the week. And I urge parents to do that always. Don't give them 10 things to do. Give them one or maybe 2 things to do. Let them find success with that. And over time, which is why it takes a long time, you start to build the self-confidence again and the intrinsic motivation, the belief in oneself that I can do this. But it takes a long time. The other reason that kids are with us for a long time is because our kids that struggle with executive function, content is not the issue. It's accessing, managing, and organizing the content. That's the issue. And as kids go up in grades and schoolwork gets more challenging and more demanding, less time in the day to do it, our kids need help. How do I take what I learned in 7th grade and apply that to the next level in 8th grade?
Right.
That's why we end up holding on to kids for a long time. Not because they're not getting it. It's just how do I reconfigure my approaches given the new responsibilities in my life.
So in those year and a half or 1 year, do they develop all of the 9 skills, or how does this work?
Yeah, or do you just focus on 1 or 2? Or,
Yeah.
So our approach is we want to hit all 9 if we can, right? And it's not going to happen in order, and it's not going to be every day that we're working around all 9 skills. But over the course of our work together, we're going to touch on all of those because we usually did schoolwork to teach them the skills. And honestly, we think that's the most effective way of doing it theoretically, and saying, here's what we think you should be doing. Go home and do that on your own. Never happened. Just not going to happen with this. So we really try to dig into the weeds and be really specific with kids about how they approach things and the way they're going to approach things.
Huh. So how are they? Do you also diagnose them? Do they go in there with my teacher said I need to develop this?
So we start every engagement with an intake session, and included in that intake is a self-assessment that we ask the students to fill out together with a parent. And we have each of the 9 domains, and underneath each of those 9 domains, we have a whole bunch of activities, right? Of things and we ask them, do you always do this? Do you frequently do this? Do you sometimes do this? Do you rarely do this? Or do you never do this? And under each of those domains, they're checking off the appropriate box. And it opens a conversation first at home to say, I definitely have some things that I'm good at, but wow, now that I look at this, there's some things that maybe I could use some help with. And then the second part of that intake is to meet with me. And right now we're doing it over Zoom. And we kind of go through that assessment together so I can gather more information, ask some questions, really see where the kids are on some of these skills. So that initial assessment gives us a really good starting point, because then at the end I talk to the kids about, okay, so we've talked about a bunch of different things, but what are your top 3 priorities? And then I turn to Mom and Dad, and what are your top 3 priorities? And that's kind of that creates our starting point, because we want to get those quick wins with the kids and with the families. If we can hit some of their priorities, that's where we're gonna start.
Is there a specific popular choice among yeah?
out of all the 9 domains?
The
Right,
4 we see, the 4 domains that we see the most, that we spend the most time on, I would say, are those first 4: organization of materials, organization of ideas, planning and time management, and task initiation. Those are the 4. Those are the 4 that we see most often where the kids are needing some support. Doesn't mean that shifting and flexibility, working memory, and self-monitoring don't show up. Of course they do. But for a lot of kids, especially during the pandemic, it's those first four that have been expressly challenging for them.
Yeah.
So, Dan, is Engaging Minds only open to local students, or is it open also for foreign
Since
students?
since you're in Zoom now.
Exactly.
Right. So I'll tell you guys honestly where I've landed on that. Okay. The before the pandemic, we used Zoom only for snow days. You know, when school was canceled for snow,
Yeah.
we still held sessions via Zoom. And when kids were traveling or someone wasn't feeling well, we'd still do that. My feeling prior to the pandemic was that, God, it's harder to do this type of work online because you're not looking at a backpack together. You're not looking at a calendar together. But what we learned is there's other ways of doing those exact same things virtually.
Right,
So
right.
it worked significantly better than I ever anticipated it could. And I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. I mean, it's great that we can now help kids not only all over the country, but anywhere in the world. Like we can
Right.
help kids with these skills. So yes, we're going to be launching once we kind of get back to normal. We'll officially launch our virtual programming. But we're working with kids virtually now. And we've got some kids in Maryland, we've got some kids in New Jersey, we've got some
Wow.
kids in New Hampshire, where we're going to work with them solely virtually.
Oh,
Okay, but it's only limited to students, not to 40-year-olds.
That's right. So I got a lot of calls from parents who say, after we talk about it, they're like, "Can I send my spouse to you?" And that's just, you know, we're really focused on the academics. You know, my background is business and marketing. And one of the things that I learned, not only through business school, but just kind of watching in the world, it's better to focus on one thing and do that exceptionally well than try to do all these other pieces and do everything mediocre. So we've really stayed honed in on helping students achieve these skills. Rather than kind of extending out into, you know, test prep, a lot of people ask us to get into, or college planning, our families ask us to get into. And we really kind of just want to focus on the executive function piece because that's the foundation of their success going forward, and not only in school, but in life.
So, Dan, do you have any success stories that you could share with us?
oh yeah.
Yeah, I have. I can tell you a lot. I can read you the testimonials on our website. The you know, but one thing I did recently was I sent an email to a bunch of families that we were working with during COVID last spring, and I asked them if they'd be willing to kind of either just talk to me or share some of their feedback about their experience with us virtually, because that's looking like how it's going to be for the time being, and I wanted to kind of figure out how to get the word out. And the folks that were with us all said things along the lines of, it was really difficult moving from in-person to online, but having someone there to help my child, you know, look at the big picture, figure out what was due, make a plan, and help them follow through on it, and then checking back with them on that plan to hone it as they go was super important. So the value of a third party, a lot of parents also talked about. Mom and dad can offer the same advice, but
Right.
we all remember what it was like hearing advice from our parents. No, thank you. I can manage this on my own, right?
Yeah.
But if a teacher says it, if a coach says it, kids are much more
Different.
open. Yeah, it's totally different. It is. It's totally different. So I'll give you one more example of how what we teach goes into the real world. So one of our parents is a novelist, and she had a deadline she needed to meet on a Sunday afternoon. And she said to her ninth grade daughter, who was with us, and her younger sister, guys, I need 1 hour. Go clean your rooms. Let me see it spotless when I come back up. And the mom did her work, goes upstairs, and she told me what she expected to see was stuff stuffed into drawers or under the bed or in closets, clean, but just kind of moved out of the way and stuffed in different places. And she said when she went around the room, she was astonished at how everything was back in its place where it needed to be, and it was all organized. And she said to her daughter, "You've never been able to do this before. How'd you do it?" And she said, "I used the TOSC, which is an acronym we use at Engaging Minds, to kind of plan and organize how we were going to go through this problem." So she was able, it took 9 months, but she was able to take that tool, that model, and then apply it, take it from academics and move it into, something like cleaning her
Personal
room
life.
and how to use that. Yeah, into real life.
So
Right,
what was
that's
the
great.
acronym again?
TOSC, it stands for think, organize, solve, and check. If I gave you guys, you think about it, think, organize, solve, and check. Where do most people like to start? Not where should they start. Where do most people start? Think, organize, solve, or check.
Solve.
Right. We all do it. Get in, get out, move on. That's our natural tendency, right? You ever hook up a new monitor? I had to get a new monitor for my computer, right? And how many monitors have I hooked up in the last 20 years? Tons. So the directions are gone and I can't figure it out. This is a different monitor. Well, if I had just taken the time to read the directions, it would have been a lot simpler. So what we try to teach the kids is to, before you hit the solve, there's 2 really important steps that you need to follow through on. Think is reading the directions and understanding, what's my goal? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then the organized step is, what tools do I need? How am I going to accomplish that goal? Once you've kind of figured out what you need to do, how you're going to approach it, now you can actually get down and solve. And then the last step is checking your work. A, that I solved the problem, and B, let me check my work for silly mistakes.
It's very
That's great.
similar, Jeff, to management, don't you think?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
the foundation of executive functions
Is
would
management.
come from management as well,
Yeah.
right? But in the context of student success,
Yeah,
right?
I like it.
So yeah, I like it too.
Me too.
I want to enroll. I want to enroll myself. So
Well, so Jeff, here's an interesting thing. Okay, so we send notes home after every session that our students have with their instructors. So the parents get a note through our portal about what we worked on, the strategies that we used, and what their action plan is for the week. That's a great tool for adults to kind of learn what we're doing, and then you'd be surprised. A lot of parents say, like, I could adopt that. That's a great idea for organizing or planning or getting started.
yeah, this is very interesting. And I'm just curious. Do you, when a student enrolls, do you follow a certain curriculum? Like day 1, this is what we do. Day 2, this is what we do. So on and so forth.
Yep.
So, yes and no. Our first sessions are all the same. We spend a lot of time getting to know the student, building rapport, and kind of working over that skills assessment again to make sure that the student and the instructor leave that first session on the same page, knowing here's going to be our focus. The middle piece of that is we have an arc to our session that all of our instructors follow every week. The consistency of this is important because what we want the kids to do is mimic this consistency when they're at home. So we start with what we call a big picture check-in. That's when we're looking at the websites, making a calendar, making our plans. Then we, from there, create an agenda for this session. And that's where we talk about how to prioritize things, right? How long do we think things are going to take? Then we get down and we do the work, and at the end, we come up with our action plan. So those are the ways that it's consistent. Beyond that, though, what happens in the session week in, week out, it depends on what the kids are bringing to us to work on it and what they've got. So we call our approach a methodology rather than a curriculum. Because to me, a curriculum implies there's one right way of doing things. And what we're trying to say to the kids is there's lots of ways of accomplishing the same task. Let's figure out your best way of doing that. So all the sessions could be a little bit different, but they're all going to, start in the same place and have that same arc as we go through it together.
Ah, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, before I ask my next question, let's just greet some of our viewers watching us.
Viewers. Yeah.
So, yep, we have Brian. Good evening to you, Brian.
Yep.
Cassiopeia,
Hello,
way
Brian.
down south. Good evening. It's very cold here, and CDO, that's south of Manila, southern island in the Philippines. Hope everyone is sound and safe. Karen, good evening. Ruby Rosa, yeah, good evening to you. Here's one from north of Manila, and also another one from north of Manila, Michelle and Marites. Good evening to you. And here's a comment from Cassiopeia. Thank you. This is very helpful, challenging, and relevant. Time management really helps, as well as TOSC. Yep, that's very nice. If you do have questions for Dan, you can just type it in, and then I'll put it here on the screen. So, this is what I'm waiting for from Dan, Jeremy. Jeremy and I.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy right now, he's still teaching in the university where I used to teach, and we used to do coaching, business coaching for students. So I'm waiting for Dan to offer a certificate for to certify coaches to help these students.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I'm waiting for from Dan. So I'll be visiting his website. What's his website again? It's Engaging Minds. So maybe one day he'll offer like coaching for students, tertiary students, right, Jeremy?
Yes, that would be nice.
Yeah.
We do go into schools and we do professional development with teachers to teach teachers how to do this effectively in their classroom. Because obviously, one-on-one looks a little bit different than working in a classroom. But we do go in, we contract with schools, and we go in and we teach the teachers, kind of get them thinking about executive function and things they can do in their classroom to help the kids strengthen these skills. Because ideally, that's where it starts, right? If you can get this type of support in the classroom, if teachers can move a little bit away from just focusing on content, but also teach the how behind it, the kids are going to be much better off in the long run. So we do that a little bit. We haven't been down your way yet, but we'd be happy to come.
Yeah. So maybe. Oh yeah, yeah. Jeremy, maybe you can share with Dan how we do these things in the university.
Which one?
We are assigned coaching, the business coaching. We are assigned students, right?
Oh, yes, we are assigned students. Well, because we are in the, should we say it, Jeff? It's we are in the entrepreneurial management program. So we belong to that program. And the output of the student, in order for them to graduate, they should have a working business for them to graduate. So aside from the academics, they should also do well in making money and creating value with their chosen or created businesses.
Business.
So
So in the
as
process,
business coaches, that's what we do. We also help them out in terms of the marketing, the financials, operations, and the human resources plan, and all of those in order for them to succeed. So that's what we do as business coaches.
yeah, and maybe part of that's why I mentioned this is maybe we can inject that idea of
Exactly.
executive function skills when while doing the business coaching for the students. But yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe you can before I ask my last question to Dan. I guess my last question is so these students, okay, they learn these things, and right now, what particular age are enrolled in your program? I mean, what age range?
So we start second grade, so 7 or 8 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, and then we run all the way through, typically through 12th grade, through high school, so 18 years old. We, during COVID, we saw and we continue to see a lot of interest from parents who have college students. So typically in the past, we've only worked with college students who have gone through our program, so they just kind of continue on with us. But this year, we're taking on new college students because they're also struggling with the remote learning piece. And so we're kind of extending that out a little bit further. But that's really as far as we go for the academics. We don't work with grad school students or anything like that.
So majority are in the 7, 8, 9, 10.
I'd say the majority are in that kind of 10 to 17 range. So a lot. So what happens is, we start middle school around age 12 or 13, and that is when a lot of these skills kind of show up as like, uh-oh, my kid doesn't have these skills because they're moving classes for the first time. There's multiple teachers with multiple websites and ways of giving out homework. The work has gotten harder, and there's more of it. So a lot of our calls come around 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then into high school as well.
All right, great. I guess that's it for me. Jeremy, how about you? Do you have any more follow-up questions?
Well, I'm
for
really
Dan?
interested when it comes to giving certification. Yeah, that's what you mentioned earlier, right? I mean,
Right.
once Dan has everything in order, right? Since you are still getting settled in,
In the new reality.
yeah, in the new normal, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I would be very interested if you could open a workshop or a program such as that. Right?
You know what? Let's stay in touch on this. And once we kind of get past September 15th, I'll be open to talking about anything. But for the next month and a half, my focus is 100% on making sure we get our kids set up. But I'd be happy to talk with you guys about how we can help in a broader sense, for sure. My pleasure.
Oh,
All right.
that's great. Well,
We'll be looking forward.
yeah.
Right on.
Okay, here's a comment before we go. Children do not see prioritize things, especially if they don't see the importance of it. Oh yeah. I think the point is So yeah, Dan, how do you show kids, students, the importance of each skill?
Yeah, that goes back to your earlier question about how long does it take? It really depends on the student's buy-in. So you're right. Whoever wrote that question, kids only want to prioritize things that are important to them or that they're interested in. But what we need to help the kids understand is, look, to be successful, sometimes we have to do things that don't excite us, but we still need to get those done. So it's working with them to make a plan of how do I get that stuff done that I don't want to do. And maybe, this is something that we didn't talk about, but there's a reason why kids don't want, and quite honestly, adults don't want to do something. And can you guess the tip? When I say to ask kids if they procrastinate, right, put things off, 95% say absolutely. And then I ask them, why do you think you put things off? What do you think they say to me? What's the natural response to that? Why do you put things off?
Maybe they say, I don't want to do it.
It's not interesting.
I'd rather be, right, it's not interesting. It's boring. I'd rather
Yeah.
be doing other things. And my message to the kids is, look, I also procrastinate. I don't know if you guys procrastinate at all, but you don't ever solve or fix procrastination. You teach how to manage it. So we'd all rather be doing other things. So I tell the kids, that doesn't count because everyone struggles with that piece. I ask them to go a level deeper and identify what is it about the work you don't want to do. So when you've got a kid who says, it's boring or I'm not interested, to me, that's code for it's hard. I don't know where or how to begin. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I can't find it, right? It's not due for another week. Why do I need to do it today? Those are the real reasons why we don't get started on things and why we're not, getting going. of course, there are things that none of us want to do, but that we know we have to do. Identifying the root issue for what's getting in the way, that's really the key.
Okay.
That's great.
Dan, do you believe in gamifying tasks and activities? Because to make it more interesting, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who works in a company that does that kind of work, and I explored it with him a little bit. I honestly don't know enough about it to really make a fair assessment as to whether or not I think it would be helpful. It's not something that we've yet kind of explored or gone down that path. Really, what we're trying to do, and I'm not saying that would be a wrong thing. That might be a great way. I just haven't explored it fully. But really, teaching the kids how to be intrinsically motivated, just kind of getting them to understand that small changes can make a big difference in their grades, in their relationship with their parents. Those are the things that kind of come up from within and help the kids gain motivation. And that's what we're going after, that intrinsic piece, not necessarily the extrinsic piece.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. So my biggest takeaway for tonight is really the TOSC. That
Yeah, guided problem solving. I think it's a big one.
yeah.
And the idea that just the development of the brain.
Oh yeah.
That we can't get angry with our children because they don't know how to do something. If no one's ever taught them how, that's our job. We need to teach them how so they can do it. No child wants to feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? No one wants to feel that way. But if they don't know how to get out from under it, then it turns into it's boring, it's not interesting, right? If we can teach them those how skills, all of a sudden they can get through their work more efficiently and effectively.
Ah, great. Yeah. Great, Dan. Thank you so
Yep.
much. We've learned so much. And here's Addy.
Oh, hi,
saying,
Addy.
Hi, Addy. Hi,
Hey, Addy.
Yeah, nice to see you here, Addy. That's it for me, Jeremy and Dan. Thank you very much, Dan. Jeremy, any
Thank
more questions?
Well,
from
thank you, Dan, for sharing with us. And I guess my takeaway, Jeff, it's not really the what, but rather the how. Because again, as teachers, what we want our students to know would be the end, right? The result. However, we need to focus more on how do we go about each stage in order for you to get to that final result. So I guess that's the most important thing here, and we need to focus on, right?
Right.
Jeremy, that's
So
a great
thank you.
takeaway. It's a great takeaway. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, for sharing with us.
Yes.
My pleasure.
And-
It was fun.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you had fun. We have another one from Boston. Noemi. Hi, Noemi. She's a math teacher in Boston. TOSC is what we also do in math and
Yeah.
solving math problems.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's not rocket science, right? It's just a guided problem solving model that if you can teach the kids how to do that, it can be very effective.
Yeah, and the simplest things, simplest methods are the most effective. They're very handy. There's not much weight to carry it around. It's always there. We just have to be able to apply it.
Yep.
Correct.
Great. So Dan, good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. When you're ready, just send us a mail.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day, Dan. Good luck.
You as well. Very
Thank you,
nice
Dan.
to see you guys. Take
Nice
care.
to see you. All right.
Be well.
Bye bye.
You're welcome. So, yeah, that was fun, Jeremy. We learned a lot from Dan.
From Dan.
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his what he's doing is very interesting. It's
Uh-huh.
something that it's something that has to be brought in here, I think.
Uh-huh. Well, you know what he talked about, those are some things that we usually take for granted, right?
Exactly.
It's like
It's
when
so
we
simple.
say that exactly. And we have high expectations from our kids most of the time. but
Yeah.
it's not clearly communicated to them. So we tend to get mad easily, I guess.
You're right.
But why should we get mad if we didn't show them the how?
The
Right?
how.
Yeah,
Right.
the how. It cannot be learned easily, right? So
Exactly.
the important thing here is the methodology, just like what he mentioned earlier, wherein it has to, as a student, you have to go through these steps in order for you to
Right.
be a master of something, and that something may be crucial and beneficial to you in the future.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Great. Well, that's it for us tonight, and we will see them again next week. And
Next week, okay.
so, hope everyone is having a good night. Magandang gabi sa inyo. And here's one
Yes.
more from Cassiopeia. Thank you. Very inspiring and motivating too. Yep.
Yep, maraming salamat, Cassiopeia. You're always watching us, and I really appreciate that.
Yep. And okay, here's one
Uh-huh.
from Annie too. I agree. It's very helpful for kids, and they really thrive with supports in
And
what's the
executive function.
it's an in the executive function. Yep.
Yeah.
That
Thank
is
you,
something.
Addy.
Yeah, thank you, Adi, and thank you for introducing Dan to us. And you know, honestly, we need that here. Even
Yeah.
I personally need those things. How to organize thoughts, how to how to really think. These are life skills. Back in the university, the only skill, well, not really the only skill, but one of the skills we were taught before entering college. There were two I remember: time management and writing.
Huh.
So we
Okay.
were taught time management. So that is something you may want to introduce to your students also. Or
Mhm.
if you're not a teacher, maybe that is something you want to offer or bring to your office. These are very important skills that everyone needs help in. You and
Uh,
I need help in this too.
yep. And of course,
Diba?
being conscientious, right, Jeff?
Uh-huh.
Um, we have the technology, we have everything within arm's reach, and it's a click or swipe away. However, we tend to be disorganized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be very conscientious, step by step, and organize things in order for you to have a more productive and efficient life,
Right.
right?
It's building those habits. Maybe
Yep.
next week we'll talk to someone who can teach us about building habits or erasing old habits.
Bad
That would be
habits.
interesting.
If it's a
Good
bad
or bad.
habit, then what do you call it? If it's a bad habit,
Vice.
it's a vice, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So
Anyway,
thank you very much. Yeah. Good night, everyone.
all right. Good night, everyone.
Uh, all right. So good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.